Welcome to the presence of the divine message that will enlighten our hearts. Together, we embark on a journey of love and tranquility in the light of these sacred words. The chosen one is currently feeling like the greatest idiot on the earth since they ruined the best thing that has ever happened to them. Everyone around them is calling them out for what they are, a total loser who is incapable of identifying treasure. You've left them sitting there, realizing that they had pure gold in their hands and tossed it away like trash. You are now entering this relationship as pure light incarnate, prepared to pour liquid wealth into what you perceive to be a worthy vessel, while you were loving them without conditions. Your heart is a never-ending wellspring of compassion, and you're going to learn firsthand what happens when someone misinterprets generosity as credulity and kindness as weakness. You're making the decision to believe in transformation with the faith of someone who has never been genuinely wronged, to love legendary, and to see possibility everywhere. Unaware that someone is surreptitiously creating a psychological trap to catch and dull your genius, you're constructing what you believe to be a castle of mutual adoration. Everyone who sees the story you're going to live will consider it a legend, a spectacular tale that combines inspiration and caution. However, you must first endure the fire that will shape you into something amazing and impenetrable. The justice scales are about to shift in ways that will surprise everyone, even you. The cosmos is taking notes with the accuracy of a cosmic accountant. A reckoning is coming sometime in the future that will make their present self-assurance appear to be the final breath of a person drowning in their own conceit. You choose to believe in magic every morning, certain that your love has the power to change shattered souls and mend broken spirits. You made the decision to present yourself as your best self, exuding a warmth that could not be manufactured or faked. Your energy was similar to filling up what you believed to be a high-performance engine with premium petrol. You took the decision to love so deeply that your friends questioned the source of your passion. You put real hope into every future you envisioned together, sincerity into every gesture, and authenticity into every contact. It was the kind of love philosophers spend their lives attempting to comprehend, and poets dream of receiving. At first, the investment appeared to be sound. You remained interested because the profits appeared promising. Unaware that someone was observing your generosity like a predator memorizing the habits of its prey, cataloging your generosity for future exploitation, you were receiving just enough positive feedback to think your approach was effective. The meticulous documentation taking place behind your back was something you were unable to observe at the time. Every act of generosity was being tallied with calculating coldness rather than gratitude. Like weapons in an emotional arsenal, every moment of vulnerability was being stored for use against you later. This was the lovely irony that was developing in the background. Even while you were sincerely making an investment in their development with good intentions, they were unintentionally producing the very proof that would ultimately ruin their reputation. If you feel the divine love, now is the time to share. Click the Super Thank You button on YouTube to contribute $50 or more and help us spread God's blessings. What you do is being watched and serves as a seed, and in the future it will come back to you a millionfold. If you feel the divine love, now is the time to share. Click the Super Thank You button on YouTube to contribute $50 or more and help us spread God's blessings. What you do is being watched and serves as a seed, and in the future it will come back to you a millionfold. The universe itself was recording every manipulation. Your goals were noble gold, your love was pure platinum, and your heart was as open as a sunflower chasing the light. The scene was being set for the most spectacular turn of events that anyone in your group would ever experience, a tale that would be recounted for years to come. Like a photographer gradually adjusting their lens until a fuzzy image becomes crystal clear, something subtle changed in your awareness. Your investor's intuition started to raise red flags as you started to see certain patterns. You became aware of how your voice was becoming smaller during conversations, not accidentally, but as a result of deliberate rejection. When someone continuously treated your opinions as less important than their own, they started to lose their weight. Your awakening's documentation phase started. You were mentally noting, unconsciously, when your independence was reframed as selfishness. You saw how your friendships were being classified as distractions, and your goals changed into unrealistic demands. You began recognizing that someone was creating walls to obstruct your light instead of coming into the sunshine with you. Each restriction came wrapped in faux concern. Every constraint was camouflaged as protection. The gaslighting workshop was in full session, and you were becoming an unwilling student of manipulation tactics. Reality was becoming negotiable, your memory untrustworthy, your sentiments overreactions. Under your conscious awareness, something important was taking place. But your soul was meticulously recording everything, every injustice, every rejection, every instance of love given but not received. A case file was being prepared by the cosmic accountant and will shortly be submitted to the universe for review. Not only were you being manipulated, but you were also accumulating evidence that would soon serve as the basis for the most amazing liberation tale anyone had ever seen. You made a decision that would alter everything. You began to figure out the relationship's emotional maths. The outcomes were so startling that they caused an unexpected awakening. Your heart stopped as you saw the statistics in the spreadsheet of give and take. You were depositing money every day into an emotional bank that never acknowledged your contributions, never paid interest, and never displayed a balance. When you were fed at all, you discovered that you had been acting like a five-star restaurant, serving gourmet love on fine china and taking crumbs of fast food on paper plates in exchange. The more you searched for it, the more obvious the pattern became. In some way, their comfort became the focus of every birthday. Their drama eclipsed all of your accomplishments. Every time you required assistance, they turned it into a hassle. Only those who have endured hell with a smile and emerged radiant are eligible to join the Obsidian Inner Order. You came here to remember who you are, and we remember with you, not to win people over. This is a war room for the spiritual elite, a headquarters for people who leap time, break curses, and bend reality. It is not a community. Weekly Zoom calls are live frequency upgrades during which the veil lifts, locks are unlocked, and dragons speak codes. Because let's face it, most people can't manage what you carry within. You'll have access to elite downloads, energetic technologies, and ancient broadcasts that weren't intended for the general public. You revive rather than heal. You take back. You rule. If you're ready to join the anointed and are sick of superficial nonsense, click the link in the description. After that, you become the source in the Obsidian Inner Order. You realize that you had turned into an emotional ATM that was always open for withdrawals but never accepted deposits. Unending debits, no credits, and overdraft fees charged to your soul were all part of the disastrous transaction history. They had no idea what was going to happen, but this audit was the first step. Your soul was now creating an unassailable legal case for independence rather than merely maintaining records. The most admirable thing was how easily you had adapted to this imbalance and how fast you had figured out how to reduce your demands to meet their limitless desires. A change that would surprise everyone, especially you, was going to be fueled by that realization. The case was developing, the evidence was growing, and a courtroom scene that would expose them entirely was about to take place. You started to see how your own affection was being used against you. They were cataloging and turning every bit of your devotion into ammunition for their armory of domination. Once you knew what to look for, you could see the patterns. They were using your loyalty as proof that you couldn't do your job without them. They were using your generosity as evidence that you were too sentimental for the real world. You began to realize how well planned the verbal combat was. Like a general mapping of adversary weaknesses, each cutting comment was intended to target particular vulnerabilities they had researched. They had turned your confidence into a target practice. You were aware of how their personal kingdom was treating your independence as treason. Every pastime you pursued was time stolen away from the relationship, and every friend you kept was branded as a threat. Once you were searching for it, it was clear that your voice was being methodically disassembled. Disagreements had turned into lectures, conversations became rants, and your viewpoint had automatically become incorrect. They failed to recognize that you were learning their complete script, not simply how to manipulate them. Every strategy they employed was being researched, comprehended, and stored in the mind for later use. Something was bubbling deep within you that they were unfamiliar with. Your inner chosen one was getting ready for an awakening that would make all of their refined manipulation techniques absolutely pointless. The instruction the student was about to receive would be more costly than anything they had ever paid for in their lives, and they were about to become the master. Brother, whatever is done in faith is returned in God's abundance. You can donate $100 using the Super Thank You button and be part of this divine call. If your roots are connected to Him, your fruit will be blessed. The day you nearly decided to stay, to keep trying, to give them another chance to appreciate what they had, this is the moment that will always haunt them. When they were about to win, they made the decision to seize even greater power. You were truly pondering whether love might break through the patterns you had recognized as you stood at the intersection of choices. There was a part of you that hoped your investment would still be profitable and that your love would still change them. They were aware of your hesitancy and made the fatal mistake of taking your patience as a sign of unwavering submission rather than appreciation for your thoughtfulness. Instead of expressing gratitude for your loyalty, they intensified their control strategies. They called for further submission. They made too many demands for compromise, pushed too many boundaries, and ignored one emotion too frequently that day. Unaware that they were about to ruin their own happiness, they chose to tighten their grip on you. There was a clarity that pierced years of misunderstanding like light piercing darkness, and you felt it crystallize in that moment. The decision became clear, unavoidable, and decisive. They believed they had won the debate, but in reality, they had lost the war. The successful ruin of their own future happiness was what appeared to be successful control. The cosmic proportions of the irony were immense. They had actually set off the awakening that would release you forever, just when they believed they had gained permanent control over you. Although it would take them weeks to realize it, this was the day they lost everything. Then it came, the turning point that separated your existence into the past and the future. Your awareness was struck by lightning with such force that everything altered abruptly, fully, and irrevocably. You made the decision to experience your power reviving like blood, reviving a long, numb leg. To someone who had become accustomed to your surrender, the feeling was overwhelming, indisputable, and downright terrifying. Like glass on concrete, the magic broke. Every manipulative strategy they had mastered was pitiful and plain all of a sudden. It was evident that buttons were being pushed, strings were being tugged, and fear was being fabricated. In that instant, you made a significant choice. You didn't have to take part in your own devaluation. The realization was revolutionary because it was so straightforward. With the fury of 1,000 storms, your inner voice, which had been silenced into stillness, surged back to life. Before anyone persuaded you to forget, you were aware of who you were. The change was evident and instantaneous. They could sense the change in your vibe in the room since it was so drastic. All of a sudden, the person they believed they had power over was totally unavailable for their games. You selected yourself, and your decision sent shockwaves across their entire world. Not later, not after more opportunities, not after they changed, but right away, totally, irrevocably. They were seeing the birth of a person over whom they had no control and who was able to see through all of their previous strategies. Overnight, their whole playbook had lost its usefulness. There was no turning back to sleep. The waking was thorough. You didn't simply go. Rather, you vanished from their domain so thoroughly that they began to wonder if you had ever been there at all. You left with surgical precision. No impromptu statements, no demands, no compromises. The quiet was more destructive than any dispute could have been, and you just stopped being available for their games. You made the decision to become inaccessible in all relevant ways, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. All of their manipulation techniques were reduced to attempts to influence empty air since you had so thoroughly detached yourself from their world. Their eyes were instantly and visibly filled with panic. You were truly gone, and no amount of planning could bring you back. This wasn't a fleeting outburst or a showy gesture. The void left by your absence revealed every negative aspect of their personality. It had nowhere to go but back to them if you weren't there to take up their toxicity. It was a cruel reflection. Immediately, people began to notice how much more relaxed the gatherings were without their urge to dominate every topic, and how much lighter the atmosphere became without their drama. They were completely horrified by what you had found. You had permanently denied them access to all of their power, which had been taken from your willingness to take part. Watching them struggle to comprehend how someone they believed to be theirs had instead decided to belong to themselves was the most lovely part. People were chatting, and the conversations weren't going their way, which was something else they hadn't expected while they were freaking out over your leaving. The whispers began right once, but they weren't nasty rumors. Rather, they were the startled discussions that take place when someone discards something that is clearly important. Friends started seeing connections between things they had not noticed while you were together. Your departure brought to light actions that had become commonplace while you were around, and the difference was obvious and striking. Overnight, their image changed from that of someone in a relationship to that of someone who lost the best thing that had ever happened to them. It was a quick, universal, and brutally honest shift. They started to be mentioned as warning stories during dinner conversations. Remember how they handled their ex? Isn't it incredible that they lost someone so wonderful? Because it was hard to suppress the reality, the stories began to circulate. Every joyful post you wrote and every accomplishment you celebrated turned into proof of their enormous error, turning social media into a minefield. It appeared that the algorithm was created to remind people of what they had lost. When value was right in front of them, no one wanted to be connected with someone who couldn't see it. They were referred to by others as the source of relationship red flags. The laughter wasn't particularly mean. Rather, it was the kind of incredulous awe that people have when they see someone starving while at a feast, or when they see someone fail spectacularly at something as basic as cooking. Your world reconstructed itself into something greater than it had ever been, while theirs fell apart in real time. Not only was the contrast obvious, but its abrupt reversal was startling. You made the decision to let success come to you naturally, like water finding its level. Suddenly, like blossoms in spring, opportunities that had been blocked during your time with them were available. Strangers started remarking on the change in your energy since it was so drastic. The light that had been weakened by their presence was now strong and bright, drawing plenty from all sides. Every aspect of your life started to reflect the positive transformation that resulted from eliminating their bad influence. Your career accomplishments increased, your relationships with others deepened, your creative endeavors bloomed, your health improved, and your finances stabilized. It was real delight emanating from someone who had recognized their value and made the decision to uphold it. The happiness wasn't fake. Across the room, People could notice the change. Everyone could see that the person's departure from your life corresponded with their social media change, which turned into a highlight reel of them enjoying their best life. Friends began citing you as an example of what might happen when someone puts themselves above unhealthy relationships. Others who were stuck in similar circumstances found inspiration in your narrative. For them, nothing was more terrible than seeing you flourish without making any attempt to mend or reconcile what had been damaged. Your accomplishments demonstrated that their presence had been a drawback rather than a strength. At this point, their misery came to a head. The social repercussions that had been accumulating like storm clouds finally erupted, showering them with criticism from all sides. By exchanging notes and discovering they weren't alone in their experiences, other people who had been duped by them started to find their voices. Even those who had previously justified their actions could no longer deny the trend. Personal repercussions were followed by professional ones. Their professional prospects started to suffer as a result of their reputation as challenging, domineering, and emotionally unstable. News of people destroying their own blessings spreads quickly. After seeing the difference between your elegance during the relationship and their desperation after it ended, family members began to distance themselves. The image made it very evident who had caused the actual issue. Their increasingly unpredictable behavior, harassment, stalking, and property damage led to legal problems. They became seriously liable as a result of their incapacity to accept reality. Stress from dealing with outcomes they never thought imaginable led to health issues. Their score, the body keeps score, was being calculated with dreadful precision. The energy they had expended throughout your relationship started to show in every aspect of their lives. They were getting exactly what they deserved from the cosmos, and it tasted more bitter than they could have ever imagined. You were nowhere to be found to assist them in processing what they had done to themselves, and the isolation and fall from grace were complete. The time hinted at in the start ultimately came with deadly accuracy months after you left. They were sitting in a room full of people who used to respect them, and they were listening to everyone proclaim them the worst idiot in history. If you want to witness God's miracles, act now. Contribute $100 or more through Super Thank You on YouTube. It's like a seed that comes back to you when planted. May His light illuminate your steps. Every donation, the involvement was unplanned and spontaneous, akin to a dam breaking under stress. Everyone who had seen their behavior, including friends, family, and co-workers, could no longer pretend that it was okay. It was a long-delayed, unanimous, and terrible encounter. For what reason did you throw away someone who loved you without conditions, command, ego, strength? Now take a look at yourself. Take a look at your current self. Like physical strikes, the words struck. By taking turns holding up the mirror, each person was made to see what everyone else had seen. They had ruined their own happiness by having character defects that they were no longer able to ignore, justify, or place the blame on. The most heartbreaking was probably their mother's voice. "I raised you better than this." You treated that individual like trash, even though they were a gift. "I'm embarrassed by your current self." The ensuing hush was deafening. Their voice breaking, they implored for someone, anyone, to help them repair what they had damaged, begging for one more chance to make amends. However, everyone in the room was aware of the same fact. You were never expected to return. The emotional, social, professional, and spiritual downfall was total. They had earned every consequence they were going through by their own decisions, deeds, and personalities. There was no one left to place the blame on, no justification to offer, and no truth to reject. You were somewhere else, living a life so wonderful that it would have been unthinkable when you were imprisoned in their mental prison, while they sat in that room, confronting their shortcomings and the unified condemnation of everyone who mattered in their lives. The cosmic justice was terrible in its fullness and flawless in its symmetry. You were experiencing something they could never comprehend, the total freedom that comes from choosing yourself over someone who didn't deserve you, while they faced their reckoning in that room full of disappointed faces. You never would and couldn't appreciate yourself. You had moved to an area where their bad energy couldn't reach you, both literally and spiritually. When you were dimming your light for their comfort, reducing your dreams for their ego, and suppressing your voice for their serenity, it was impossible to see how your new surroundings represented your true nature. The most exquisite aspect of your metamorphosis was your emotional liberation. You had no feelings of rage, grief, or even interest in their present situation when friends brought up their name. Like a tune that used to play non-stop but now couldn't even bring back memories, they had completely lost all emotional significance. After a thorough remodeling, your heart was like a house, tidy, roomy, exquisitely furnished, and prepared for relationships that would genuinely value what they discovered inside. Dreams, plans, true happiness, and individuals who earned your energy now filled the place they once occupied. Success kept coming your way in ways that appeared to be almost magical to onlookers. Financial abundance stabilized and increased. Career chances proliferated like springtime flowers, and artistic endeavors grew with vigor that had been stifled for too long. Every chance, every blessing, and every happy occasion proved that your decision to leave was the right one. Among those who knew you, your story became legendary. The phoenix that rose from the ashes of a toxic relationship more beautiful than ever before. The treasure that refused to remain buried under someone else's insecurities. The chosen one who saw their value and chose freedom over familiar pain. Because it was based on self-respect rather than approval from others, the peace was deep and unbreakable. You had discovered something they could never take away from you, the capacity to succeed without their consent, to be content without their approval, and to be whole without them. People would wonder how you'd done it and how you'd changed so drastically. The reason was straightforward. You had begun giving yourself what you had been attempting to give them, and had stopped taking less than you deserved. The story had perfect cosmic symmetry and came full circle. You had gotten everything you believed was impossible, and they had lost everything they believed they could never lose. People who had been settling for less than they deserved started a movement after your emancipation. Your example served as evidence that anyone with the courage to choose freedom might achieve it. Support groups started utilizing your successful emancipation experience as a case study. When assisting clients in envisioning what life might be like after making their own decisions, therapists referred to your journey. Don't ever take good love for granted because it will walk away and find someone who appreciates it. You had demonstrated that toxic people only have power over those who engage in the dynamic. The person who lost you became a cautionary tale told at dinner parties, a reminder whispered among friends. When a player decides to quit, the game is over, and the toxic player is left to play by themselves. Your narrative became proof that, despite being suppressed or dominated for a long time, chosen ones always managed to regain their power. They were still sitting in rooms full of people who no longer respected them, still reminded of what they had lost, and still dealing with the fallout from decisions they could never reverse several months later. As various groups of people alternated in attempting to help them comprehend the seriousness of their error, the intervention had evolved into a monthly event. Even in your darkest moments with them, you were creating a life so beautiful that it would have been unthinkable. There was fresh proof every day that you had made the right decision, and that the freedom you had gained was worth every uncomfortable moment you had to endure to get it. Everyone who knew the story realized how mathematically impossible their situation was. The odds of finding someone like you, someone who would love them in spite of their imperfections, someone who could give them the kind of devotion you had, made winning the lottery seem like a sure thing. They lived their lives with the knowledge that they had all they required for happiness and had sacrificed it for the fleeting gratification of feeling better than someone who was, in reality, better than them in every significant way. You could cut the irony with a knife because it was so thick. According to your story, genuine love never remains where it isn't valued, respected, or returned. Liberation is always achievable for those who are prepared to put themselves above toxins, and happy endings are true when you have the guts to write them yourself. With the accuracy of a cosmic accountant, the cosmos had administered flawless justice. Those who value themselves draw experiences that mirror that value, while those who ruin their benefits receive precisely what their deeds merit. The scales were in perfect balance. The chosen one had made a sensible decision. The individual who was unable to appreciate the value of the treasure when it was in their home spent the rest of their life being reminded by everyone around them of what it looks like to lose all that is important. They would never fully get that you didn't escape. You were set free by their own actions, and they would continue to tell people about the one who got away for years to come. Because no one could match what they'd destroyed, you had become the benchmark by which they evaluated every relationship that followed. You continued to rise to heights they could never attain in the meantime, surrounded by people who valued your light rather than attempting to extinguish it, creating a loving legacy that recognized your actual value. You must look for yourself, chosen one. Your narrative illustrates that the finest retribution is a life so wonderful it becomes confirmation that leaving was the right choice.